Hello everybody. Today I start the first of a series of videos about ASP.NET Core Basics with the current version of .NET Core 1.1. If we consider that I will develop example application over macOS, we can apply the same principles if we are using Windows or Linux, with a subtle change in the project startup for Visual Studio or IntelliJ Writer, about which I will discuss further. .NET Core's webpage shows us the way to install the software on our machine. In this case, I've previously done this. The installation process gives us a command line tool which will allow us to start developing the project. However, installing Node.js is useful to be able to use project templates for Yeoman, which requires npm for its installation. I consider that you have already heard about what ASP.NET Core really is, so I just want to mention that this is the ASP.NET iteration with most changes ever. Among the most interesting and notable changes, I have to mention that most of the functionalities have been renamed and rewritten. In addition, we will see that the mention of Node.js is due to the fact that some tools such as Bower and npm are strongly used in application development, as Nugget is still a main part of the project as well. From release candidate until today's version, there have been many changes, so it shouldn't be surprising seeing more changes in the future. Let's get started. .NET command has been installed when .NET Core was installed. Here we'll see several details when we execute it in command line. For now, we are not going to do anything else with this command, so let's check Node.js. This is Node.js page, and I have it already installed in my machine. The instruction node-v shows us the current version installed in my computer, which includes the Node Package Manager utility better known as npm. Let's check this command. Here we can see that npm is currently installed, and for now we are not going to go deeper with Node.js until future videos. As we mentioned before, we are going to use Yeoman as well, which uses Node.js in order to initialize projects using project templates. We can install Yeoman with the following command. This instruction has globally installed Yeoman in my computer, and it is accessible from command line. Let's check it. As we can see, Yeoman shows us the option Install a Generator. The .NET Core's team has created a generator for ASP.NET Core, and this is the version that we will find in Yeoman when we search for ASP.NET. Additionally, we can see other options, but we are interested only in the first one. Once the generator is installed, we can proceed to create the project. First, execute the command yo ASP.NET. After this, we have to create an empty web application and enter the name of the project to be created. The basic application is already created, and it shows us the steps that we can do to test it. If we list the folder's contents, we can see that the folder News App was created. Let's get into the folder. Now we are going to execute .NET Restore. and we'll see that all NuGet packages are going to be installed. Next, we run .NET Build, and we'll see how the code created by the Java template is being compiled. And finally, we execute .NET Run, and we see how the web server starts with the application running in its respective port. We can open the browser and see the correct execution of the new ASP.NET Core web application. This time, we have created a basic application, and we could continue writing code on command line. However, it is very useful to have an editor like Visual Studio to accelerate the development process. For the same time that .NET Core was being developed, the Microsoft development team was working on a multi-platform tool named Visual Studio Code, which is not as complete as Visual Studio, but equally effective for developing applications. I have previously installed Visual Studio Code in my computer, so we can make an additional step that will be very practical for our purposes, and this is install code command on path. This will allow us to use it in terminal. We have to execute Shift Command P shell command on Mac and restart the terminal for the changes to take place. It should be noted that this command is only available on Mac. This is not necessary if you are using Windows, unless that for some reason Visual Studio Code was installed on the Windows path. After this, we can go back to our directory and execute code point. This command opens our application on Visual Studio Code, and we can continue the development on this tool. It will show a warning about adding things for debugging. There is no problem with accepting it because the IDE requires it. We can see that the project contains several files. For now, we are going to look into 3 of them. Project.json contains the project dependencies, that is, the NuGet packages that are included in the creation from Yoma. We can also see the framework supported by your project, in this case .NET Core 1.1, that makes it portable between Mac, Windows and Linux. Program.cs is the entry point of the application that starts the execution of the web project. For now, we are going to leave it as it is and we will not change it. And finally, startup.cs is where we are going to include the components and startup features for the application. For those coming from previous versions of ASP.NET, the web config file was the place where specific project settings were placed. This time we also have this file created, but if we open it, we will find that it tells us to configure the application in a file app-settings.json. So let's start by creating it. Something important to mention is that ASP.NET Core requires that specific functionalities be individually added. This is a plus because this modularity allows us to have light and non-overloaded applications with unnecessary services. However, it also makes it necessary to manually add those required services. With some practice, this is not a problem. In project.json file, in dependency section, we can see the NuGet Microsoft.extensions.configuration.json. Now, we open the file startup.cs. If we look at the configure services and configure methods, we can see that they receive several parameters that are injected into the project by ASP.NET Core. Later, we will study them as long as we need them to add functionality to the project. For now, we need to add the functionality to read the configuration file. Taking into account that ASP.NET Core makes available several services by dependency injection, we require information about the hosting environment to be able to find the file app-settings.json. ASP.NET Core injects the available iHosting environment service into the constructor that we are going to create for a startup, or into the configure method. How can we know the services that ASP.NET Core makes available? We can place a breakpoint in Configure Services and see a list of those services. We start the project execution in debug mode pressing F5, just like Visual Studio. First, we start by adding the configurations to the services that the ASP.NET Core injects into the project. In Configure Services method, we are going to add the iConfiguration reference to the services object. The settings we added into app-settings.json are available as a singleton for the entire application starting from this moment. We can also create our own services and make them available in the same way. We will create a services folder and we will add the file greeter.cs. We can see that we make use of the configuration injected into Startup. Now add the greeter service to the list of services. In the configure method, we add it as a parameter and we will use it. When we run the code, we can see the service we created using the configuration service that we have just added. As we can see in ASP.NET Core's page, Middleware are the components that are added to the application flow to handle HTTP requests and responses. As we can see in the image, each component processes requests sequentially and processes the responses in the same order. If we look at the configure method and pay attention to the app parameter, we can see that two pieces of middleware were added, one to process exceptions, the other in the run method, which is actually a terminal piece and no other middleware can be internally executed. In project.json file, we note that we have already included the nugget Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Diagnostics, which gives us both use developer exception page and use welcome page methods. Here we see it inside the verification for each development environment. We can also add a testing error in order to see details of ASP.NET Core for developers. This verification is important because it helps us to determine the test or production environment for project execution. If we open the file launch settings.json, we can see this variable, which can be configured for development or production or staging environments. Most middleware comes as a nugget package. So far we have not added anything else, and we can see basic methods of the app object starting with prefix use. We are going to add a middleware to be able to use static contents like HTML, styles, and images. We need to add the nugget microsoft.aspnetcore.static files. Now we can also make use of useStaticFiles method, which is desirable together with useDefaultFiles, for which we also added useFileServer method that includes the previous two. Finally, we add an index.html page under www root, and we can see it working.